Good Thursday evening, everybody. My name is Colin Livingston. Welcome to Talkin' Torque. Man, as always, another chaotic and crazy week. Lots of racing the past little bit. Lots going on with work. I mean, we are really talking torque today. Flip this damn thing out of my way. I'm tired of this little pop filter. Do this on the fly. Who cares? Much better. Yeah, lots going on. We were just at GP3R in Quebec over the weekend. Very eventful race for us because there was a lot going on, just like I got lots going on here. I don't know why I can't take this stupid thing off, but that doesn't matter. We're just going to do it the best we can. Lots going on with the car. We had some brake issues on the Saturday of practice, to the point that, when Alex applied the brakes, the front brakes locked up and didn't unlock, to the point that when we came in to check what was going on after Alex's report, the crew chief couldn't even free turn the wheels. So that put us quite far behind during our Saturday practice session before qualifying. Still managed to put the car fourth, which was, I think, better than what we expected. We had no idea. Alex had no idea what the car was going to do. Tried to be careful on the outlap. We only ran one, practical hot lap. And that's kind of where we had to leave it, just to save the tires and not overdo it. But yeah, once we got to the race, very chaotic. But instead of wasting all my hot air on just my opinion, we've got a legendary Canadian broadcaster, all around good guy, Mr. Todd Lewis. How are you doing, Todd?
I will take the title of honorary good guy as very good compliments from you. So thanks, Colin. I'm doing really well. Nice to see you. Nice to hang out with you for a little bit and talk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, keep in mind, my comparison is with your counterparts, Adam and Dave. So, and to another extent, Joel. So, I mean, good guy is not a stretch,
relatively speaking. Okay,
when you compare to the rest of the company.
Sure.
I love the background, although I'm trying to figure out why the cars appear to be pointed in the opposite direction. Was that taken at the road course, or is that?
No, it flips. It's a mirror image. It flipped. I just grabbed it quickly to throw on as a virtual background, and it flipped the image the opposite way. So that's all right. It's looking, if you were looking this way, the cars would be traveling this way towards corner one. That's the Indy 500 for sure.
I mean, the cars are a little blurred out, so it's tough to see the configuration, but yeah, I mean, that's obviously one of the greatest places in the world if you're a fan of motorsport. I mean, there's a handful of venues that have that kind of cachet, but I mean, you've broadcasted from the Indy 500,
Yes, it is an overwhelming feeling to go in there. In fact, the first time I went, I was not working. I was there to visit folks in Indianapolis. There was a trip planned, and it was just, we're going to Indianapolis, and I hadn't been. It's like we're going to go to the Speedway, we're going to go to the museum. So when you drive in, you go down through the tunnel between turns 1 and 2, and you come up on the inside, and you see this gigantic place around you. And we pulled into the parking lot for the museum, and I got out of the car, and I just started looking around and looking up, and the person I'm with is talking and asking questions. I'm literally like, shh. I just want to soak this in for a couple minutes. And it was, it was something special. It's a feeling that you get when you get inside there. If you're a fan of motorsports, it's an overwhelming emotional experience.
Now, I'm not sure if you had the same experience as I did. First time I was there, I want to say was in 2009. So Alex had just essentially come back into the IndyCar series after a full season away where he was doing, CASCAR at the time.
Right.
He had, signed the deal with Conquest. I'd come on as a sponsor, which was kind of a goofy thing. But when I got to the venue, which I had seen, for years and years and years on TV, I was an avid fan of motorsport, long before I met Alex. But when I saw the venue, I had this kind of image in my head of the time I pulled into, Daytona, the time I
Yes.
had pulled into Charlotte, the time, I pulled into, some of these NASCAR venues. And when I got to, literally the corner of 16th and Georgetown, I was like, this is it from the outside, because
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's not an overly tall structure. It's not like seeing a
No.
football stadium or a baseball stadium. And I'm like, and there's a lot of exposed piping on the backside of the grandstands from like water lines and septic lines and Lord knows what else. But did you have that same experience when you saw it for the first time from the outside?
Yes, you're right. It's not it's not it doesn't have the height of a giant stadium, whether it's Daytona, an auto racing facility, or a football stadium. And you kind of think, okay, well, I guess this is interesting. But it's when you go inside, and that's when it got me. You just kind of go through
Oh
the
yeah.
tunnel, look up, and then it surrounds you and envelops you, and that's the special time that you just look around. And then the first time you get to wander through the garage and gasoline alley, and then go out onto the pit lane, and then to be standing out on the front straightaway in the pre-race lead up to the Indianapolis 500 with, I would conservatively say, 100,000 of your closest friends, because that's how many people are on the front straight prior to the start of the race. It is just it's an exhilaration and a rush that's like no other I can think of.
Yeah, no, you were great. You sent over your bio. I'm not gonna, try and pretend that my background research was so good that I was able to come up with all these things. But in the early part of your bio, it actually mentions that you were watching the Indy
Mhm.
500, the 92, specifically the 92 500. That, if you're a racing fan, you will know is the year that Scott Goodyear and Little Al finished thousandths of a second apart. But that was the thing that that turned you into a racing fan. My question is, why were you watching the race if you weren't actually an avid motorsports fan?
Well, because the Indianapolis 500 is an event. It's a spectacle. It's one of those sort of must see events. So, and I still remember the place where I was living at the time. It was in the lower floor watching on television, and interested, of course, because there's a Canadian involved, and I knew the story leading up to it that Goodyear had tried to qualify, didn't make it. He bumped his teammate out of the car, had to start tail end to get into the race. So it's like, okay, I'm kind of interested in watching. And as you watch this race go on, you think, okay, well, Michael Andretti's kind of dominating, and it's looking like it might be his day. And then it turns upside down late in the race, and it becomes the head-to-head duel with
Yeah.
Al Jr. and Scott Goodyear, and the two of them swapping the lead. And it was captivating, and it just absolutely sucked me right in. And watching that finish, and I said to Al Unser Jr. many years later, and it was the interview post race, interestingly enough, that really got me when Jack Arute was asking him about the win, and thinking it was like, it looks like there's tears in your eyes. And Al Unser Jr. said, you just don't know what Indy means. And that struck a chord with me, and it connected all the years later when I went to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the first time, and you go in, and it's like, okay, now I get it. Long before then, I decided, well, this is pretty cool and exciting. I don't have the skills to drive with any wherewithal, and it costs a lot of money to do that. How can I manage to get involved in the sport somehow? So I was working in the media. I had a radio show and was doing a Monday to Friday gig. And it's like, well, maybe I can transfer some of those skills and work in motorsports. And that's how my path opened up, is
Yeah.
finding that way through.
Now, over the years, have you had the opportunity to actually get your hands on the wheel of
Mhm.
any kind of race car?
Oh yeah, yeah, one or two. It's been I've done a few track days and school days with different cars, whether it's Trans Am, Camaro, or whether it's an open wheel car too. I've done just in the Formula 1600, Formula 2000 vicinity, and it the toughest part I had was driving home afterwards because it feels like you're standing still once you as you're moving around, and I'm going 110 or 120 on the highway. It's just
Yeah.
I am absolutely standing still. I could be going so much faster. So yeah, I've done a little bit. I attempted to race in a go-kart series, but work schedule didn't allow for that. I was in career turmoil at the time and working all different kinds of hours. So it's my hands-on experience isn't as much as I would like it to be, but it's yeah, I've had a few opportunities and it's fun.
So you've had the opportunity to drive a racing related vehicle, but you've never actually competed in a race as a driver?
Only I've a few in karting, but
Okay.
not as a competitive stock car or sports car or open wheel car.
So that's, I mean, honestly, that's one thing we have to try and do for you is get you into an active race.
Sure, I'm game.
Like, whether it's once a year or once every couple of years. I mean, just it's my personal belief. I went and did a couple of years ago. I did two oval races in one day. I'd never been
Yeah,
in an oval car in my entire life, and I wanted to do it because I wanted to get the perspective of what it was like running around. I did my races at Wetaskiwin. We just had the Pinty Series here a
mhm,
couple weeks ago, and I wanted to see what it was like because over the years, and I'm not going to throw any particular person under the bus, but I wanted to I wanted to find out if it was simply as easy as our crew chief or as our spotter at the time or whoever who was on the radio telling Alex, like, you've got to get the car lower in this corner. You've got to, well, sometimes the car doesn't want to go there.
right.
Like, so to get a feel, like if the car's really understeery, you can't just point it down. So I just wanted to have that perspective because I knew I was going to be doing some spotting with Alex and I knew it was going to be not just standing at turn 2 at Canadian Tire where, you know, yep, over the hill, around the corner, you got 3 cars. Good job, bud. See you in a minute
See
and
in a
20
minute and
seconds.
20, yeah.
I wanted to know what it was going to be like. And I mean, one thing that you do extremely well, and I actually have a list of questions kind of that we'll get to later on around this,
Sure.
but it ties in now that I don't ever hear you voice an opinion.
Oh,
We've
um,
had we've had a we've had numerous conversations in the paddock over the years. I can think of one even recently where it was yourself, Dave, Alex, and me at Canadian Tire. I
TTMP,
mean, Alex is, you wind him up and he's going to tell you about
and he's
everything you
telling
need to
great
know.
stories. Yeah, that's
But I've never, like, in a broadcast, in a personal conversation, nowhere along the way do I ever hear a Todd Lewis opinion.
really I'll have to pay closer attention to that because I'm not short on opinions. But
You're a broadcaster, and I think
yes,
that you're very super conscious not to be biased.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. My job is to tell the story. I'm the conduit. I'm the one that brings the story of the driver or the crew chief or whoever I may be talking to or just telling or filing a report that I'm bringing that story to them. It's not for me to editorialize or put my personal spin on it or give my opinion on it. I'm telling the story most often is what I'm doing is in a race broadcast, be that on television or working PA announcing at an event. I'm telling the story of what's happening and trying to provide a little insight if I can from the knowledge that I've gained. It's not my spot there to give an opinion or give a suggestion as to what would be a better way to do something or why that's the wrong way to do something or what could they possibly thinking by doing it this way. That's so there's time for opinions. I just don't know that during the race broadcast where I'm commentating and providing information is the time to do it.
Yeah, I heard Paul Azinger. We had them, come to my home golf course. We did 3 years in a row of what was called the Tour Challenge. So the first year, I say I wasn't even part of the course but the course brought in Peter Jacobson, Fred Couples, Stephen Ames, and Craig Stadler. And they just did like this,
Right.
4-man exhibition, and it was all for charity. And the one year we had Paul Azinger, and Azinger was doing play-by-play for ABC. And a question came up about whether, what he thought about a guy like Johnny Miller. And I don't know if you're a golfer, if you know who these guys are, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I think Johnny Miller is a pompous asshole. Like seriously, I mean,
you're not alone. Yeah.
Very knowledgeable. Yes. Great player. And he had a run that was, as good of a run as anyone's had in a similar period. But Azinger put it the best. He said, he didn't mention Miller by name, but he said, there's a number of people that make the broadcast about themselves.
Right.
So you'll hear a Johnny Miller type say, well, this is a 15-foot putt. There's not really in this, and I expect him to make this. Now, only one of two things happens. The putt goes in, and nobody thinks anything of it because Johnny said this was an easy putt, or it doesn't go in, and the player looks like an idiot. And that's the kind of broadcast that, Zinger said, like, I don't want to do that. I want to tell the story, but I don't ever want to make the story about myself. And that's something I think you do extremely well.
Thank you. And you're right. That is my approach. It's never about me. It is always about who I'm covering and the story I'm telling. There's other avenues and venues where I can express my opinions and thoughts and ideas, but during when I'm covering an event like that, that is not the place for it, because that's not the role I'm in. Now, if I were cast in a different role on a sporting event, there's room for commentary. I'm also not the analyst. I'm the reporter, announcer, commentator that's working in pit lane. My gig is to find out about what's going on. If someone's struggling out on track, I try to find out why. I try to find out information before the event as for things to look for in the race. These are different strategies that we might see in terms of fuel. I'm just thinking of GP3R recently. How soon were drivers going to stop is the biggest question. Is it going to be early? How early? Are they going to wait a little longer? And that kind of thing. That's my role, is to find out that information and pass it along during the race.
And do you scan team channel? Like, do you listen to team radio?
I don't, because we have others on our crew that are normally doing that. And if there's those that have had the opportunity to listen in on our channel on the radio, and find it very amusing at times, first of all. But that's
really?
It is a oh, sure. We have fun. There's no sense being there.
No, not that you won't have fun, but you've got like teams and crew members that'll listen to your.
No.
Oh,
They won't.
Sorry.
No, just someone who happens to be there for the day, and they happen to have an extra headset on.
Gotcha.
But they'll it's an almost constant stream of chatter in terms of producer, director, directing cameras, which battles to follow, what someone is hearing on different radio frequency, things to look for in that. So I don't scan myself because I don't have to in that particular case.
Interesting. Yeah, I was curious because, we had Adam Ross on a couple of weeks ago, and, I think I maybe talked about something I shouldn't have, because Adam was a little bit hesitant, but, talking about how the broadcast is actually put together for TV, and how, certain things happen after the fact. And I won't rehash it because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but
that's okay.
Well, I don't know. I just,
you ask the questions, I'll decide how to answer them. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. But, it's always interesting. I mean, I always feel terrible for you specifically, because you've got to wear a fire suit. You're not really going over the wall. You're not really in any danger, but that fire suit, especially on, truly hot days. But just curious, like, because no matter what, you always seem like you know what you're talking about, specifically to a team's issue, which could happen very quickly. Like, we saw, Alex Lebay, for example, came in with a flat tire. Well, where'd the flat tire come from? Well, here's where the flat tire comes from. And I haven't seen last week's broadcast, but I'm just interested where all that information comes from.
It's years of having conversations and spending time with crew chiefs, crew members, drivers, officials, spotters like yourself. Anytime I'm at the racetrack and I can spend time with someone, I'm going to learn something. It may not apply immediately in the next couple of hours. It might not apply in the race that we happen to be at, but it goes into the bank of knowledge that I keep for the future, in that I may remember 2 races from now that there was a particular issue with brakes, for instance. You were just talking about that before I came on. If
Yep.
there's a particular issue about brakes that a team or a driver was dealing with, and the same issue may resurface. So it's just, is this the same issue? Is it a different issue? And these are questions I can ask before jumping in and giving my bit of information. So, but I'll remember, yes, you guys had this problem earlier. Is this something else? So that's there's no substitute for, see, this is the great thing. I like hanging around the racetrack and wandering around and talking to people. And it's kind of what my job entails,
Yeah.
is spending a lot of time there and talking to people. And it helps me learn and gather information that I can use during the broadcast. So it's the best of all worlds there.
So I'm going to combine, all these things,
Yeah.
into one, and you're always free to decline to answer, but let's go back to GP3R. Obviously, opening lap, one of the more spectacular crashes that we've seen. I mean, definitely not the biggest, not the worst, but, spectacular in nature. Let's just go right to Todd Lewis and see if we get an
Assign the
opinion.
blame.
Not necessarily. Blame doesn't really work for me. But what's your take on what happened there?
I've watched it conservatively about 25 times since the event took place. Initially, I thought that I'm really puzzled as to why it happened. I thought, and I will say that I believe that Kevin was overly aggressive in the early going, combined with, he told us during the race and has stated again afterwards that he lost brake function. I still think it was an overly aggressive move to be making at that point in the race. Now, of course, everyone is super hyped up at the start of this event. It's the best opportunity to gain positions when you're bunched up on a restart, especially double file like that. And it's GP3R, which is super important for French Canadian drivers. To do well there is, it can make or break a season. It can boost a career. It's very important. So I think that he was perhaps overly ambitious in his attempts to gain positions in the early going, because I believe he started 4th.
No, we started 4th.
You started 4th. He was even further back. He started 5th. That's right. So it was an overly aggressive move. Sometimes that will, an opening will present itself or appear to present itself in the early going on that first right-hander, because it's so wide, and drivers sometimes end up going very wide out of corner number 1. So you'll see an opening and an opportunity to move up, which he did because he was running 4th at the time. I believe he'd gotten ahead of Alex on that corner, and Alex was probably going wide to stay away from the crazy. But there was a little bit of a space between LP Dumoulin and Andrew Ranger. It was not a big enough space that you could fit a car through. And we saw Kevin bump the side of LP before he went launching up over Andrew Ranger.
Yeah.
So I think
there was definitely a hole, and the door closed as Kev was,
but even
moving up the inside.
Even the hole that was there, it was wide enough at the tail end of those 2 cars for his to go through. It wasn't wide enough to get out the other side. And that's where I think the overly aggressive part of it was. And he would have been better. He backed out initially after 1. He should have backed out again. And again, this is where the brake issue comes in. How much could he do? Because if you watch the in-car video a bunch of times, as I have, you can see him trying to jump on the brakes, but obviously nothing happens, and he ends up on top of Ranger.
Yeah. Now, to that end, the start, I think a lot of this goes back to Cameron and how he started, how he took the checkered flag, because he had the pole position, or sorry,
Yeah.
He had the pole position, but he immediately took his inside starting, because he was on the right side,
Mhm.
and he took LP and just like drove him almost off the track to start the race, which is really, really uncalled for. Now you have to hold your lane, and the leader gets a lot
Well,
of,
you have
you
to
know,
hold your lane until you get across the line, and
correct.
then you
But
can, but again, you're right. Because going up the inside like that, he has to slow down further to make a hard right-hander unless he drifts out to the opposite side of the racetrack to driver's left, and
yeah,
then he can get a better angle on it.
yeah. And there were like, I saw 3 spotters who went immediately up to Ken, our NASCAR official who is responsible for the spotters, to say, like, Alex was, very, very animated on the radio. I'm sure you can
Mhm.
imagine.
I've heard.
And he said, like, he was excited, but he was pretty cool to say, like, listen, we got to talk to these guys, because that start wasn't like, he said that felt like a green, white checkered restart, not the start of a race where everyone was just kind of swarming. But I think a lot of that, and like the end result of Lacroix and Ranger getting together, started with Cameron and a really, really like overly aggressive.
That's
Um,
GP3R.
yeah,
That's Trois Rivières to French Canadian drivers, whether it's Cameron, whether it's Tagliani. You've seen Alex when he's won that race, the emotion that comes out of him after. That's a big deal. Kevin Lacroix has won. Ranger has won. He hasn't won for a lot of years, but Ranger's won 4. That is a big deal to
yep,
win that race. That's the history. That's the everybody thinking back to Gilles Villeneuve and being discovered at that race. That's why it is so important to these drivers. So I'm not surprised that you get that kind of an aggressive. So we always talk about it through the weekend leading up to, is like, you know what, it's going to be crazy. It always is here, and this one didn't disappoint either.
yeah. Now getting back to Lacroix, I mean, he's had, a reputation of being overly aggressive. I mean, I watched him when he first came into the series. I've watched him kind of, devolve and then re-evolve and kind of reinvent himself. I think one of the things Kevin has really done well is, kind of think more championship style racing, where
Yes.
it's not about winning. Like, he raced a lot for, maybe not, let's go back 5 years ago. He raced a lot like Paul Tracy. Like Paul Tracy, as talented an open wheel driver as we've seen in the last 20 years, for sure. My conservative opinion is that PT should have at least 5 championships, and he's got 1 because he just didn't finish enough races. And I think Kevin's kind of gone through the same thing, but the last couple of years, I think he's really matured.
Of course, and part of it is learning curve, coming over and running stock cars and learning ovals and the rest of it. But yeah, it's the approach of charging out. I'm going to the front. I'm going to lead every lap. I'm going to win every race, versus being able to take a breath and think, okay, you know what? Maybe if I really push hard, I can get that extra spot. Maybe if I really push hard, I can get that win. But you know what? It's okay to take the position I'm in because it's a good championship day. And those are decisions that have to be made in the heat of the moment when you're behind the wheel
Yep.
and the car is in front of you and it's so approachable and there's someone pounding at the back door to get in too. So I agree with you. I think Kevin has grown as a racer, and it's unfortunate they had some struggles out west, or I think this championship would be even closer this year. But he's definitely improved and isn't quite the same aggressive Kevin as all the time as we've seen in the past.
Yeah, no, obviously we're in a really interesting and important part. I mean, there's no unimportant races anymore. Not that there ever really was, but we go from GP3R. Next Monday, Tuesday, we're going to be at Oshwegan Speedway for 2 races on dirt, followed by iCar, Canadian Tire, and then obviously our closer at Delaware. But now it's 3 road courses. Obviously, GP3R is behind us, but with the uncertainty of the 2 dirt races.
Yes.
Last year, I thought we did a spectacular job. I will openly say that I just vehemently thought that we should not be on dirt, that there's no
Mhm.
point of us on dirt, that there's nothing to be gained, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then I saw the work that, Clinton Jeffrey, Glenn Stiers, and everyone at Oshwegan did, the hospitality we got, and the show we ended up putting on, we did a great job. There was really, I think, one car managed to not finish, and that was because of a mechanical issue. There was
Right.
no real contact. I'm not as optimistic that we're going to run the same this year, because I think everyone's going to come in and say, well, we know what it is. Now we're going to push a little bit harder. What, like, do you have any instinct or any thoughts of what we might see here on Monday, Tuesday?
You're right. I'm just as curious to see what happens this year. And the same thing last year. I thought it was a great production. Everybody did a great job. But now we're going to come in and everybody's going to think, okay, well, we did this. We know how to do it. Everything's going to be fine. We can just go out. The track will also be a little bit different, I suspect, this year than it was last year. They did a great job grooming it by all accounts last year, but it's dirt, so it's always going to have little shifts and different characteristics. And is it going to behave the same? Is the weather going to be the same leading up to it in terms of how dry or damp it might be? So I think that's going to play a role. I think having back-to-back races always has an impact. It's funny, usually that'll happen in Saskatoon, where we run the doubleheader on the same night. Sometimes you have one that goes super smooth, and then the other one is a bit of bumper cars. I don't know if we're going to see that. I think the potential for that absolutely exists. And depending on how the championship is sitting going into race number 2 as well, you may find some drivers being a little more aggressive than they necessarily would be, thinking, I got to make up more points. I got to make up more points. So there's always the potential for a little bit of crazy.
Do you think there's any chance that anyone catches Trayton in the final 5 races?
Yes,
5 6
absolutely.
races?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the championship is decided. Once, because the fields are big enough, it only takes one race where to have trouble, and that closes things back up and makes it a much tighter situation. Now, obviously, if we get 2-3 races behind us, that challenge becomes much bigger. But as of right now, it's 31 points, which is substantial, but it's not insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination. No, I think he can be caught, and I think he knows he can be caught.
Yeah, and being in that position for the first time, I mean, Trayton's done a great job. Obviously,
Absolutely.
we're under the same 22 Racing umbrella. We talk an awful lot back and forth, and he's super cool and super composed, all the time. I mean, everyone has moments where things get out of hand, but I don't think the pressure is going to I don't think it's going to affect him as a driver. What might happen, and I'm not wishing this on anybody, but I've seen it too many times, where we've been in the championship hunt, and all of a sudden you start getting to the closing races and you start doing things differently.
Yes.
You don't do, it's like, well, we gotta worry about this, and we got to worry about this, and like things that you didn't even think about at race 1 or race 2, where you did really well. Hopefully, they've gone through it obviously with Caden recently when he won his championship, quite unexpectedly. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously we think we've got a shot, and having a couple more road courses coming up, definitely works to our favor. But obviously you've covered NASCAR, CASCAR. I mean, forget IndyCar. There's all this, you've covered a variety of series for the last 20
plus years.
Yeah. So we don't need to put
that's okay
exact numbers on it. Is there somebody that that you've dealt with over the years that's no longer part of the series that you miss?
Oh, yeah, I could probably think of a few. If you
either because they were great interviews, or you just had a personal connection, or you just like the way that they drove.
I'm glad that Alex Labbe has come back, and we've gotten to enjoy him a little bit more. And I think we're going to get to enjoy him a little bit more in the future too, which is, I think it's good for the series, because he has a good sense of humor. He's a talented driver, and has a lot of skill and knowledge about the cars and what makes them go fast, and what makes for a championship season. So yeah, I'm glad that Alex is back. So that's probably the most recent example, and it's nice to have him back. And we see each other and laugh and smile and joke around, and that's the best part. And you'd probably say the same thing, is just the people that you're involved with. That's the reason you go to the racetrack all the time.
I'm just there for the money.
Yeah, you're the one.
Yeah.
Okay, you're the one that's getting it. Okay.
No, I'm happy to spend it.
Yeah.
That's what I do. No, I mean, couldn't agree with LeBay anymore. Like, I mean, he's, aside from being, championship driver,
Mhm.
highly, like, he's won on pretty much everything. He's a great guy. Like,
Yeah.
Canadian Tire, the first race, he was actually working with us as a spotter, helping drive her out. And, like, I wasn't expecting to see him up there. It's like, hey, what's going on? And then find out that, now they've got a family and,
Yeah.
baby. And it's like, oh, geez, like I guess this is what I miss when I'm not on social media, like everybody, every
Every
little
10
bit. But
minutes. Yeah.
yeah, great guy. And, we cannot go wrong with more guys like Alex LeBay for sure.
Totally agree.
Now, obviously, you have broadcasting duties, which, for you, this is a profession. What, if any, do you actually watch racing as a fan anymore?
Oh, yeah.
What do you watch?
After we're done this, I'll watch the SRX race that's on tonight,
Okay.
because I want to see and
Eldora?
watch that. Yeah, they're on the dirt in Eldora tonight.
Yep.
So I want to see that. I'll watch Formula One when I'm able, at if the schedule permits, or failing that, PVR is a wonderful invention. Same thing with IndyCar. If I'm not working at an event, then I will watch it live. And if you can't watch it live, I'll watch PVR. Same with IMSA, both WeatherTech Series and Michelin Pilot, Xfinity. I don't watch trucks a great deal. I will watch ARCA occasionally as well, again, because we have some mutual pals who will participate in that series a little bit, and there's some that that are participating in that series a little bit. So yeah, I love watching MX5 Cup. Mazda MX5 Cup is some
Really?
of the most fun racing you will ever watch, because it's all the cars are equal,
Yeah.
and it is essential to bump draft to be successful. So you are either the car in front and someone drives into the back of you as hard as they can to move you both forward, or vice versa. It is so much fun to watch the MX5 Cup. I'll watch the USF 2000, USF Pro 2000 championships as well, because I have a bit of involvement with those at different events, covering the series and stuff too. So I watch an assortment, I guess is the best way to put it.
It's hard to avoid any series that's voiced by Rob Howden.
Yeah.
That guy, that is one of motorsports' greatest voices.
And the funny thing is, we worked together for the first time, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now.
Okay.
And we'd both been working in motorsports for like 20 years, had never met one another.
Yeah.
And it was just the weirdest set of circumstances. Know a lot of the same people, of course, but we had never met each other previously. And now it's, I'll send him a text. Oh yeah, I'm going to be at St. Pete or whatever, and I'll see you there. And
Yeah.
so, oh, he's a terrific guy.
Lovely guy. Now,
Yeah.
out of all the, let's pick, the top 5 series. I don't know if there's top 5. Do you have a personal favorite?
That's
why?
a Sophie's choice kind of thing.
Not really.
A little bit, because I have great affection for all, like the NASCAR Pinty series and the predecessor CASCAR. I have a warmth and love and affection for that, because it's what I've been involved with since the mid 90s. So that's where I started. That was the first series that I worked on. So that has a special place in my heart. You talked about the 92 Indy 500 earlier with Scott Goodyear and Al Unser Jr. So I wasn't at the first couple of Van Molson Indies in Toronto, but I was at them regularly after that. So I guess, 92, I was a motorsport fan in that I would go to the Molson Indy in Toronto, but it wasn't feverish that I watched every race and the like, until I got into the 90s. And going to that event was, that was my Christmas. That was the best thing in the world, to go and watch all weekend and go wander through the garage and paddock area, and Danny Sullivan signing autographs. And it's the best. So those are a couple that are really close for me.
Okay. Yeah, I will say without any hesitation now, I take Pinty's out of the equation because this
Mhm.
is, as an active participant, it's, obviously I travel almost every week now to,
Yeah.
4 weeks in a row, I'll be flying back and forth to either Ontario or Quebec for Pinty's racing. And I found out this morning I'm actually flying to San Francisco tomorrow at 6:20 a.m. to return back Saturday before I fly back to Toronto on Sunday. So
Nice.
yeah, I'll be getting closer to 2 million miles before I know it. But out of the big, if say the big three, there's F1, there's IndyCar, and there's
There's
NASCAR.
NASCAR.
Let's
Yeah.
just say, without question, hands down, no argument, it's IndyCar.
If you're taking Pinty's series out of it, sure, I'll give you IndyCar by a nose. Yeah, that's fine.
A
Just
nose
be
over.
um, uh, the other two are pick 'em, honestly. I really like F1. I was lucky enough to work a few F1 races for TSN when they mounted their own broadcast for the
Yeah,
Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. Boy, that was a lot of fun. That is a circus. Like you see it on TV, and then you see the Drive to Survive, and when you're standing in the middle of it, yeah, it's something else. So that's pretty spectacular and fun. But then you go to Daytona for a big race, or you go to a Homestead. I mentioned both of those because they're not both are in close proximity to my home base in Florida.
yeah.
But they're yeah, it's pretty special to go to those places too.
Yeah, I mean, Daytona itself is the
Oh,
the the attraction. It's not
yeah.
necessarily the 500 because I can't stand plate racing or tapered spacer
I
racing.
know, it's just it's the I understand the you want the cars that close, and it's dramatic, and it's edge of your seat, but then it turns into a gong show sometimes, and I find that so frustrating, and just but I have there hasn't been a solution provided yet, and I don't know if
Yeah, see
anybody
the
wants, but that's what I find frustrating.
yeah, with Daytona Talladega, it's no longer a matter of if, it is,
It's when.
know that over half of these cars are not going to finish
Yeah.
because if you know that going into an event and you're the sanctioning body and you don't change the rules, like the restrictor plate wasn't invented to keep cars close. It was because they didn't think that they should be going faster than
Yeah.
200 miles an hour. So how do
Right.
we do that? Well, we do it like that. And then the side effect is that now you've got 30 cars running within 1 second for a
Mhm.
bunch of laps. Well, that's kind of more dangerous than just
Isn't it?
running fast, I would say.
So there's other solutions, and I mean, I know this has been discussed. Is fine. Take the spacers, plates, whatever you want to call it off. Don't limit the horsepower. Flatten out the rear spoiler. Make the drivers brake.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
which is incredibly simplistic, and I simplify everything. But you know what? They should be looking to try to find a better way.
I agree wholeheartedly, but now it's become, like for me, I'm not trying to impose this on anyone, but when we talk about NASCAR, as when I say NASCAR, I mean cup level NASCAR, not
Mhm.
Inty's level NASCAR. It is no longer about racing. It's vehicular entertainment. They don't
Well,
focus at all on, because why do you have green white checkers? Why do you have stage racing now? Why do
mhm,
you have, like, they've taken all the racing part of it out because in I don't know. And candidly, I don't watch Cup anymore. I don't watch
mhm,
Xfinity. Aside from maybe a spot here and there, I will watch trucks, but I don't have TV service anymore. But I
right.
think they put on great races everywhere they go. But
Mhm.
I love the racing part of it, and all this nonsense about how, well, it's always got to be a checkered, a close finish, and well, then what were was a 500 lap race or a 500-mile race? What were the first 450 miles all about? Why
Right.
why did we go through that exercise? I just for me.
No, I appreciate your frustration, and I kind of get the same way at times too about different things in the life. I don't think that stages are necessary. I think that they've become accepted, and I'll tell you the biggest thing is the TV networks love them, is because they're predictable cautions when you can go to commercial break. So that is a big reason
Yeah,
why they're around, and they're staying. I don't believe that you should have a green white checker at every race. Every race does not have to finish under green, in my opinion, because sometimes it doesn't work out that way.
I
So
loved watching Jeff Burton lap the field at Loudon. Like,
yeah,
you
but
hit on something, like, why take
And he
away a
just
team's advantage?
Sure, sometimes you're gonna have a day like that where you just spank the field, and it's absolutely your day. But you did say something that I wanna touch on because you said, entertainment. Whatever form of racing you're in, you are in the entertainment business. It is a sport, it is competitive.
Yep.
You are in the entertainment business because you are competing for dollars for people to come and pay to be at your stadium
Yep.
or to watch on TV. You are in the entertainment business. So if your product is not entertaining, they're not going to watch. So that's something that not all racers and sanctioning bodies and people necessarily agree with, but I do. It's like it's an entertainment business.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at the reduced capacity of all the NASCAR tracks and the reduced attendance at the track and, the empty seats that even show up in the playoffs, fans are not responding to what these things are, and
Well, the
maybe on
part of that
TV they
was
do, but
part of that was building to the peak capacity of 20 or so years ago, and it's just, oh, we'll just keep building more stands, but you have to create the demand too, and it's an ever changing and evolving world with more choices and more options. So they would have been better to say, you know what, we're pretty good right here, let's just hold, and if there's a demand over the number of seats, well, you'll just have to try again earlier next year to come back
yeah.
to us. So
But as far as I'll go back to IndyCar, and why is because it's unpredictable. And you've got the big teams of the Penske,
mhm.
Ganassi, Andretti, McLaren. I guess they're kind of, it's no longer a big three anymore. It's, kind of a big four. But David Malukas was running fourth last weekend at Nashville. Like, David Malukas, like,
Yeah.
in one of the lowest budget teams. How is that possible? Because the team hit on something. The driver is great. Obviously he's making a big case for himself to move maybe to one of the bigger teams, once his contract's done. But who is going to win an IndyCar race on any given weekend is a coin toss. And there are legitimately 15 drivers on any given weekend that can win. And you see passing, you see strategy, there's two tire compounds.
Mhm.
In F1, they say you have to run two different tire compounds, but that's a totally different thing. But who's going to win the next F1 race?
Oh yeah, this is one of the
Verstappen or maybe Checo?
yeah, this is one of those seasons where in F1 it's complete domination. I can remember back to, the Michael Schumacher era at Ferrari where there was a stretch like that too. And it's interesting for a period, then it becomes frustrating. You'll look back on it in, I don't know, 10 or 15 or 20 years and say, boy, that was an incredible season with, not having to necessarily go through it. You'll think that was a remarkable season and incredible to accomplish what he did and win so many races and stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. I want to see whatever the form of racing is, whether it's sports cars, open wheel, stock cars, it doesn't matter. I want to see racing and I want to see battles. I want to see them. If you're fighting for first, great. If you're fighting for fifth, 15th, I don't care. I want to see drivers racing for position throughout, and that's the recipe. And I think that again, it's very simple, but I think it gets lost sometimes in trying to micromanage and overthink a few things.
And that's where, guys like you are vital to the development of motorsport. Everyone likes to credit Drive to Survive, but to me, Drive to Survive is like the ice bucket challenge. It
Yeah.
was great for ALS research for a year, and then all of a sudden it doesn't exist anymore and nobody thinks about it. And Drive to Survive is going to get a lot of people looking at TV screens, but the product isn't there to keep them watching. So if you're actually interested in racing, you've got to, go back to IndyCar, lesser extent NASCAR, or go to do some, grassroots racing where you just don't know. And that, the excitement is where it's at. For me, I love watching a driver figure out how to outbrake someone, get a car where it's, to most mere mortals is out of control. They manage to execute that without making contact, and then they make a pass and they drive away. And it's like, that's the greatest thing in the world to me is
Yeah.
watching these super talented drivers get to show what they've got. The NASCAR side of things is like, Ty Gibbs, smash, crash, no penalty, and I
Yeah.
get a trophy for winning. Like,
You
where's the skill?
Yeah, I agree with you. Bumping someone out of the way for position for a win, and so that's not the skill. That's not the talent that I want to watch. I want to watch drivers battle for position. Again, it can be deeper in the field, and that's one of the things that we go through when we're covering the races is people are looking for battles. What's the best battle? It might be at the front, or it might be back in sixth and seventh, or it might be even further back still. But that's what we're looking for, and that's what we want to show
Yeah.
because that's the most compelling and exciting part about the race is seeing drivers, lap after lap, trying to find their way around. Someone will pop out, oh, can't make it this time. I tuck back in, make my way around, look for another opening on the next lap, maybe at a different corner, maybe I approach it a little differently, and that's the excitement part for me.
Yeah, 100%. I love, that part of racing. I mentioned the grassroots. Do you ever get out and watch amateur racing?
Yeah, occasionally I'll I remember there was I think it was a memory that popped up not long ago. It's just, well, what do you do on an off weekend? Go to Flamborough because I went to Flamborough. So yeah, I went to an APC race, another stock car race. Occasion, yeah. So if I've got an off weekend, I was thinking about it this weekend that I may do the same on Saturday because I don't have a race that I'm working on Saturday. So yeah, maybe I'll go and catch one. It's just there's there's times through the winter too where it's just I haven't been to a racetrack in a long time, and it's just I need to go and just sort of hear cars and see cars, and it just
No.
yeah,
There's
all of
always a
that,
smell.
all of those senses that get amplified when you're out there and you're part of it. That's so yeah, on off weekends I absolutely will.
Okay. Well, we need to get you, maybe, get some more influence from Mr. Howden and get you out to a couple of go-kart races,
Sure.
especially down, if you're going to winter again down in Florida. There's so
Mhm.
many great venues down there
Yeah.
and great events like the Rotax races that we do, or the Rock Challenge, or the, SCUSA races. Like, I mean, they're just unbelievably competitive.
Okay. We'll talk further about that and see what we can arrange for sure. I'm game.
Is there a driver that you saw from an early state that you knew was going to make it big?
Yeah, I'll tell
I
you.
even have a guess in my head at
Do
who you're
you?
going to say, but
Okay. I'll tell you about Andrew Ranger, and I don't know if you
mm,
recall. He's sort of done okay in NASCAR in the Pinty series.
yeah, I've heard of that guy.
I was going to say I'm pretty sure it was 2007. I got the call for to work on the US network telecast of IndyCar that year because they needed someone to work at a race in Monterrey, Mexico. It was Andrew's first year, and he ran IndyCar for 2
Champ car.
years, like
Yeah, yeah,
Champ Car, excuse
yeah,
me,
yeah.
for 2 years. And he was, with a small team, small budget, he brought a whole bunch of it, but he finished on the podium that day. And watching him, and I wasn't familiar with him prior to that,
Yeah.
prior to his entry into IndyCar. It's like, yeah, this guy can drive a race car, and he's pretty good at it. So, and it was a year or two ago. He said, my son was watching and the race from Monterrey, Mexico, and you were working that. I said, yeah, I know. You remember on the podium? And yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's one that I knew was pretty good. There's another one in IndyCar now that I also think is going to be good because he's won at every level in the feeder series, and he just won a second race, and that's Kyle Kirkwood. He's super talented.
He's doing okay.
Yeah.
And Kyle's one of the guys that they're talking, like, because I got to talk to their COO, Mr. Rob Edwards, who's a good friend of ours.
Yes.
Was, part of one of Alex's team in the past. And this isn't coming from Rob, but this is coming from published reports. But they're really trying to move next year to just paid drivers, not
Right.
pay, but drivers that they select entirely on merit. And I think Kyle's one of the guys that's going to be retained by them.
I believe he's under contract for a little longer. He and Colton Herta, but okay, so here's the opinion part. I think both those other seats are changing.
I wouldn't be surprised. And to see Grosjean, I think he'll stay in the series though.
I'm not 100% convinced. Maybe, but I'm not 100% convinced.
yeah, I don't know where else he would go, but
I believe he has a deal with Lamborghini and sports cars too.
okay. Yeah, from my conversations with my friends over at Dale Coyne, they said they would bring him back in a
Yes.
heartbeat. They loved having him there.
Yes.
They loved everything about him. So, we'll see. And yeah, obviously, Devlin, it doesn't sound like, I mean, as long as he's got the sponsor dollars, he'll land at another team, but it doesn't sound like it'll be Andretti for
I
sure.
don't believe so. No.
Yeah. So you do keep your finger on the pulse, hey?
I do my best. And again, it's having conversations with people at racetracks and all the time. But I've always found that, I use this dumb cliche, but it's like I have two ears and one mouth, and I try to use them in proportion. So you learn a lot by listening to other people.
The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open.
Yeah, right. Very good. Also appropriate.
Now I could have led with this, but I'm going to maybe close with it.
Sure.
Obviously we're broadcasting on the Crier Network, and as of recently and soon, we'll be getting to see Racing It Out with Todd Lewis as part of the network.
The racing podcast that I do with Caitlin Patrick will be as part of the network. In fact, we just recorded another episode yesterday. I'm not sure that it'll be up on the network, but yes, look at that fancy screen grab that you have. So yes, that will.
This was the best I could find.
Yeah, me with the deer in the headlights look, but that's fine. That's
Caitlin
often most of the time.
Down,
right. But the Racing It Out podcast will be part of the network, and we're excited about it. Wider distribution. We talk about racing, but we do not talk exclusively about racing. We like to use racing as the conduit to bring people together and have conversations about other issues as well in society and the world and life in general. And we're also big foodies, and we like to talk about food and places that we've eaten and cooked and stuff. So that will be part of it as well. I also, there is also a second podcast that I'm a part of that will be on the network called Scouting the Refs, that I do with my friend Josh Smith, who there's a million and one sites that do stats and info for NHL hockey players. He does them for officials. How many games, number of penalties per game on average. So we talk about officiating and rules once a week. We're a little slower in the summer. We've been off for a couple of weeks, but that will also be part of the network. And it's about helping people understand and digest what the rules are, why a call was made, and understanding the rules. And yeah, sure, we get a little silly sometimes, but we have a lot of fun. But we've gotten great feedback from fans that listen and from all the officials that listen as well, which is kind of gratifying. So that's the other one. Yeah.
At some point I'll have to connect you with my, former, I don't know how to say this the right way without saying it the wrong way. My former radio partner, not that we're not partners anymore, but obviously they're no longer radio people with the demise of TSN 1260 in Edmonton. But my former radio partner, Jason Greger, is a stats guru. So that would probably be a really cool crossover to either get him to join you guys, or if they at some point he's gonna land on his feet with either another radio show or a podcast or something to get you guys to chat with him. So at some point when you're ready, let me know.
You got it.
But yeah, no, it's going to be great, because for me, any motorsports coverage is good motorsports coverage, and especially when you've got good people presenting it in the right way. So it's going to be great. Hopefully we're not too much in competition on the network. My lack of viewers and your legion of fans.
I know my mom tunes in every week, so it'll be great.
Oh, is that right? We should have sent the link.
It wasn't that long ago. My mom says, how do I get podcasts? how do I get podcasts on my phone? So yeah, but no, it's not about competition at all. It's about highlighting stories and telling stories and having discussions and conversations, expressing opinions and ideas like we've been doing for the last, I don't even know how long we've been doing this now, but yeah, that's the best part. So that's not a competition. That's amplifying good stories.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, we are 5 seconds away from 60 minutes. So
Woo!
this is a good termination point for sure. Looking forward obviously to seeing you in Oshweekend here in whatever that is, 2 or 3 days. I imagine you'll just be kind of checking in on Monday.
I'll be there starting on Monday. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then looking forward to it, which I definitely again wasn't doing at this time last year, but also very cautiously considering what all of our moves are going to be, because, obviously as a, part of a team, we have to think about, bringing the car back in one piece. And, the difference between this doubleheader, just to be sure for anyone who, may want to watch or may want to come out, the doubleheader happens over 2 days. So if you make a mistake on day one or you get damaged day one, you've got the better part of a day to fix it. I mean, it's late starting track times. The green flag is like 9:45, 9:42 at night or something like that. And then we do stage racing, so it's going to be interesting. But because we're staying in a hotel and I don't have my motorhome, I won't be able to recreate like I did after the
well, I'm sure you'll manage. So good for you. But no, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. It will be an interesting couple of days to see what happens over the span of that 48 hours and where we are in the championship and series in the season afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to it. Todd, thank you so much. Wealth of information and delivered in such a positive way. This is what makes you, the best in the business here.
Well, you're very complimentary and very kind. So thank you. It's been a pleasure. As I've said to you before, like anytime, I'm happy to jump on and we'll have a conversation, as I'm sure we'll do on every time we cross paths at the racetrack.
Well, now that we've been formally introduced,
yes, exactly.
It makes it a whole lot easier.
Sure thing.
Okay. Right. See you on Monday. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, pal. See you.
You bet. Oh man, Mr. Lewis, what a great guy. I mean, for a lot of people who watch the broadcast, you maybe don't necessarily get to see Todd's face an awful lot unless they, throw a camera at him. That's the guy. And, with his broadcast partners, Adam Ross and Dave Bradley, I mean, they're the voices and they're the faces of our series, and they're the ones that tell the story. But, that's enough rambling for me today. We will be back. I think I'll be back next week. As always, thanks for watching. Try and follow us. Obviously, we're on a variety of media. Try and follow us on YouTube. That's where we can interact with questions and answers a whole lot easier. And like I said, we'll see you back here next Thursday.